Fake reviews are killing our ability to Google for the truth. I Googled this morning, and two of the top 9 Google suggestions for fake reviews are fake reviews generator and fake reviews generator free. So we know that it's hard to trust reviews for consumer products. What about reviews for B2B software? If I buy something at Amazon or somewhere else that's a consumer good, I might spend $50, I might spend 100, maybe $500. If you're buying B2B software, it could be $500,000, could easily be more with multi-year contracts. So today we're chatting with TrustRadius CEO Vinay Bhagat about a new program to kill fake reviews. Vinay, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be with you.
Wonderful. Super happy to have you. It's been a while since we've chatted, so great to see you again. Talk to me first about the scale of fake reviews. How prevalent is the problem? How big a deal is it?
It's a significant problem in the B2B industry. We end up rejecting about 23% of the reviews that are submitted. We do so for a variety of reasons. Certainly fake reviews is part of the problem. Quality of content is a secondary problem as well.
Interesting. So 23%. I'm going to guess that's bigger in B2C, but in B2B, that's big enough. Talk to me about the different levels or kinds of fake reviews. I mean, you could have incentivized reviews. You could have totally fabricated reviews. What do you see in the market?
Yeah, about 40% of the reviews we reject are completely just suspicious. They look outright fraudulent. We see people, now to write a review on TrustRadius, you have to use either a corporate email address, which is very hard to fake, or a LinkedIn ID, which is possible to fake. We do see people creating fake LinkedIn IDs. We also see people, along with creating fake LinkedIn IDs, plagiarize content from other sites and try and write content that appears to be real, but when you really dig in and scratch beneath the surface, that you can tell that it's fake. So in addition to sort of just the technical authentication, we put every review through a human screening as well, where we have a team of people read the reviews, check for plagiarism, make sure there's no conflict of interest, make sure the reviews are written by someone who's likely to be using that type of product, and also spot check other sort of things that we view as sort of tells that a review may be fake. If a reviewer is suspected of being fraudulent as well, one of the other things that we've done is create honey traps, where we actually create fake products and invite cohorts of reviewers that we think might be contributing fake reviews to actually review those products. And if they do, then it's a sure tell.
Wow. Interesting. It's a sting operation.
Absolutely. It works really, really well. Incredible.
Super interesting. I had no idea. Now that sounds like a lot of effort. I mean, talk to me. I don't know if you've quantified it. You probably have quantified it, but if you look at an average review that comes in, how much time are you spending with that review to ensure that it's verified before accepting it?
Probably about 15 minutes for each review. It is a material amount of time and human effort, but the stakes are high in B2B. This isn't about picking toothpaste. This is about picking a piece of software that you're going to run your business. A, it could be really expensive. B, it could be catastrophic if you make the wrong decision. And it can be career limiting for you if you make the wrong call as well. I started TrustRadius because we bought a piece of enterprise tech for my last company. Cost us $200,000, was rolled out to 450 people, and we made a bad call. It wasn't because of a fake review, it was because we didn't have the right intelligence, but the consequences for making a bad call are really quite catastrophic.
Interesting. And that was one of my questions I was going to have for you. I mean, have you talked to somebody who has made that kind of bad call, maybe based on bad reviews or other data or something like that? Sounds like you were that person, or you were one of those people. Have you talked to others who have made $100,000, $500,000 decisions based on bad reviews and come to regret it?
Yeah, I mean, we actually see, in our own review data on our site, there are people who sort of voice regrettable decisions or voice that they found the product having been through a journey of other products that didn't quite meet their needs. So that's a very common piece of content that we see surface in the reviews on our site, and in the kind of one-on-one interviews that we do with buyers and reviewers on our site. Those experiences are fairly common. Another experience that's even more common is how people actually make no decision or protract a purchase process if they don't feel confident in the data that they are getting. Now, that could be either because they see reviews and they look fraudulent, or perhaps because there isn't enough data to make a decision. In fact, in our research, 77% of buyers say it's really important for them to understand the cons before they buy a product. They want to know what they're getting into. They want to know whether it's going to work for their use case and what the real world experience is going to be. So maybe a bigger challenge than making a bad decision is making no decision at all.
Interesting. So you've introduced something to stop fake reviews. Obviously, you've been doing a lot of vetting for years now, but you've introduced something new that you call True. Can you talk to us about that? What that is?
Yeah, it's interesting. In B2B, fake reviews and bias reviews are an issue, but in B2B, perhaps a bigger issue than outright fake reviews is where vendors cherry pick who they invite to give reviews. It's a very common practice for vendors to run NPS surveys and peel out the people who give them a 9 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10,
Yes.
and then drive them to review sites. For quite a while now, we've seen that as an issue, and it's impacted the entire industry. Certainly, we're not the only site that has seen this phenomenon. About 3 years ago, we introduced an algorithm called TR score, which corrects for that bias, where if we have a review or a rating that we have sourced completely independently through our community, in other words, converting the people who are using our site to contributors, we rate that in our algorithm 100 times more so than a review or a rating driven by a vendor, just because statistically we have seen a great degree of bias in the samples that vendor send us. Now, if a vendor becomes a good actor, we've always had sort of an approach where the vendor can prove to us that they have been open in their sourcing methodology and invited every customer to review them. We would actually change how that algorithm worked for them and give them kind of full scoring, as it were, for that data that they submit. But the most of the market is still sort of over in the camp of cherry picking who writes reviews. So the True campaign is really more of a motivation and a recognition strategy to make vendors do the right thing, which is invite all of their customers without bias to write reviews and to remove the cherry picking. The value of that to the market is that you can trust that not only are the reviews real and legitimate and not fraudulent, again, with all the protections we have against fraudulent reviews, but you can trust that that data is reliable and reflective of reality and not just a biased sample of happy customers. The vendors who embrace this, really gain in two ways. One, they differentiate themselves in the market as being open to sharing kind of holistic feedback about their product experience. Hopefully that leads to more trust and faster deal cycles and higher conversion. But it also means they're going to actually listen more attentively to their customers, because if you only listen to your happy customers, you're not listening. You've got to have those neutrals and even the negative viewpoints out there in order for you to really be an effective listening company and improve the product.
It's super interesting you're talking about that, because that's been a long-standing practice in mobile apps, where you will have a little pop-up that comes, how are you liking it? How are you liking this app? And if you rate it 5 stars or 4 stars, then it'll transfer you over to the App Store or to Google Play to write a review or something like that. It's also interesting because a friend of mine, Robert Scoble, says that when he's looking at ratings and reviews, he's actually looking at the 1-star reviews. And he's getting the most benefit out of those. And if he feels like, hey, they had a problem with it that I won't have, or they're looking for something that I'm not looking for in this product, then he's not too worried about that 1 star. So it's kind of interesting to hear how you say how you're putting that together. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, we've done a lot of primary research about trust factors. After all, trust is in our name. But what buyers tell us is that they're really looking for balance. Many of them will do exactly what you're saying, go and look at that 1s and 2s and rule them out if they have a use case that's grossly dissimilar to theirs. Others will filter the reviews to try and find people who have the use case that's similar to them. And others will look at the middle of the pack, where they're looking for someone who has a very balanced viewpoint. That balance is really critical. in fact, of the top 10 indicators of what matters to buyers in terms of whether they can trust a review site, balance is the number one factor. They also look to the experience of the buyers, of the reviewers, to see if they have a background similar to themselves. They look for detail and specificity. They look for the quality of the feedback. They look at whether the grammar and the authenticity feels real, professional. And they look at volume too, but I think buyers are more discerning than most people think. I think they can see when something that just smells bogus.
Yes. It'd be interesting to know the average rating on a review site. That would be very interesting to see.
Well, on TrustRadius, it's around 3.9 out of 5. And in the consumer space, it's sort of around 4.1 for a site like Yelp and TripAdvisor. Some of the B2B sites that don't correct for the bias, on average, we see higher scores on those sites for many products than we see on our site, just because they haven't taken that step of correcting for that bias.
Makes sense. So one thing that you've said is that your algorithm is ungameable. That's a pretty bold statement because people try hard to game things. We know this. We've seen it in a lot of different areas. Talk to me about how you have the confidence to make that statement.
Well, we are religious about making sure we know the source of every review and rating on our site, whether it's contributed by a vendor or sourced by us. And so we can classify every review and rating into those cohorts. And then because we take such a stark view in terms of overweighting an independently sourced data point 100 times more than a vendor-driven data point, it's really, really hard for a vendor to correct that factor. No system is completely infallible. We absolutely have found at points in time fake reviews get published on our site as well. I think we just take the extra mile to make sure that doesn't happen, and we correct it quickly if we have suspicions, again through techniques like the honey trap mechanism, where if we have a bunch of reviewers that we have questions around, we want to put them through that extra level of scrutiny. So no system is 100% fallible. I would just say that we've really taken it upon ourselves to go far further than anyone else has. And the True campaign, again, is not really centered around fraud per se, but around what I think is actually an even bigger problem in B2B, which is gaming of the system, where introducing bias into data sets makes it hard for buyers to trust in the data when they're comparing products. Now, scores alone don't tell the whole picture. We've, in fact, in our research have learned that buyers actually look beyond scores and actually care a lot more about what people have to say qualitatively about a product. But at a high level, we want our scores to be reliable and reflect reality and not a biased data set.
Go ahead.
I was saying we've been really pleasantly surprised by how, we knew buyers were going to react positively to this move, but we've been pleasantly surprised by the number of leading tech brands who say, stop the insanity. We don't want to be part of this game either. We think someone needs to step up and create a foundation for, level playing.
Interesting. And that segues quite well to another question I had for you, is which is, all brands are worried about that one customer that is not happy, or that 15% of them, or whatever the number is, but somebody didn't really try it out, or didn't work, or it didn't work for them for whatever reason, and they get a very bad review. Can a bad review kill a sale? I mean, you talk to me about that fear from a brand.
An understandable fear. The reality, though, is if people don't see any balance in the commentary on a site, they're not going to trust any of the data. And so the presence of one or two isolated, very negative reviews might hurt you, might need to be something that you have to explain. But by the same token, buyers understand that there are anomalous use cases that may not be the same as theirs. Maybe they understand there are weird configurations or weird one-off scenarios. And it's a lot to do with how the brand engages with that person. Do they write a response? Do they try and triage them? We've actually had customers give a very negative review to a product. We've seen the brand engage, and then the reviewer has been prompted to update their review and change their score. And maybe they were just in need of a bit of triage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you've got a large enough data set, let's say 100 reviews, you've got one or two isolated instances, there's an opportunity for both buyers to sort of, to look at the holistic picture and say these are isolated. And there's also an opportunity for the vendor to triage those instances and correct them.
That seems to be an answer to this viewer question as well. John Wester was saying, are emotionally compromised or irrational reviews weeded out? And it sounds like there's a process, at least for obviously there's some oversight, but there's also a process for our brand to respond.
Yeah, I mean, when we process reviews, one of the things that we look for is sort of a quality factor. We grade every review an A, B, and C, and in terms of the reviews that present first on our pages, it's the ones that are actually both recent but also graded high. And in terms of our grading factors, we look at the level of qualitative insight. So someone who's either just purely ranting or raving but not providing any substance, at the extreme end, that review is not going to get published. We return about 7% of reviews that we think are legitimate but just don't meet our quality bar. To have reviewers edit them and resubmit them. Of course, some people choose not to resubmit, then they're rejected, but some portion of people will augment their review. And then, so there's a minimum threshold of quality of insight for the review to get published, to C grade. And again, the reviews that have more insight, that talk more to factors like use case and provide some depth and substance, are the ones that get prioritized first in terms of what gets displayed.
Super interesting. Well, this has been interesting. Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. Very interesting to see just, what all goes into a rating on a site like TrustRadius and others like that. Much appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on.
So thanks for joining us on Tech First Draft. Whatever platform you're on, please like, subscribe, share, comment. If you're on the podcast later on, please rate it and review it. Thank you so much. Until next time, this is John Kutsier with Tech First Draft.